we are not seeing the type of leadership that uplifts humanity, that honours all life. And this is why, Charlotte, I think the archetype and the embodiment of the priestess is really, really flourishing at this point in time, because at the heart of all priestesses is a sacred leader. Is how can I honour myself and my own needs and my own work, my own healing, my own wholeness, so that I can become a better leader and space holder for others and allow their uniqueness, their gifts, their joy, their passions come forth, and for them to connect with their soul, their divinity in such a way that they then go out and touch the lives of other people as well.
Welcome to the Wildflow podcast with me, Charlotte Puanto, certified cycle and feminine embodiment coach and shamanic womb guide. In this podcast, I'll share my wisdom and conversations with powerful change makers, thought leaders and embodied teachers to invite you to live cyclically in flow with your menstrual cycle instead of fearing it, to heal menstrual shame and normalize womb wisdom and period positivity, and to step into your sovereign magnetic power to create and embody the change you desire to see in your world. Settle in to unleash your wild flow. Today we are in for a treat. I invited, after much deliberation and waiting and thinking, one day I would invite on one of my favourite, most influential and inspiring teachers onto the podcast, and that is Julie Parker. Julie Parker is the founder of the Beautiful You Coaching Academy, co-founder of Priestess Temple School, and a mentor, counsellor, coach, supervisor, and guide for sacred leaders and space holders. She has trained thousands of life coaches from around the world to birth their soul businesses and has had a thriving counselling and coaching practice for nearly 2 decades. Julie has inspired thousands of people as an in-demand speaker for clients, including Apple, Telstra, and Soulpreneurs. She's the recipient of numerous leadership and women's awards. She's an international award-winning published author and host of the top-ranking Priestess podcast, where she has interviewed some of the world's great spiritual thought leaders. As a devoted and practicing priestess, Julie is committed to contributing to a world where presence, healing, and social justice are honoured. Julie and I had such a gorgeous conversation that I just absolutely loved. I was in my element, just all warm and fuzzy from such a beautiful connection. But it was a great opportunity for me to ask her some of the questions that I had really been feeling that would be beneficial for this audience, for the podcast, but for me too. So as I said, she's somebody who's taught me to be a life coach a few years ago. It was the first coaching training I did. And she continues to be somebody who really leads in integrity, as a powerful role model, and an activist, not just a coach. So we had conversations about what sacred leadership is, how she works with her cyclical nature as a woman in perimenopause, how she uses spiritual practices to hold herself in integrity and to feel grounded and connected and able to do such powerful work in the world. And we heard about some of the things that she has got coming up too. So settle down with a cuppa, get cozy, and make sure that you are able to sink into this delicious conversation. Welcome, Julie Parker, to Wildflow. How are you today?
I am so well, Charlotte. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest.
I'm so excited. Thank you for being here with us. I was just saying to you beforehand that I sort of had it in my mind that one day I'll ask you to come on, and I was so excited and like, oh, that would just feel like a real highlight. And then I realized recently I didn't know what I was waiting for. And I was like, I'm just going to ask you. And here we are today. So,
well, I'm so glad that you did. You know, sometimes we just have to reach a moment in life where we go, damn it, I'm just going to go for it. And you did.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So as always, I'd love to begin with a cycle check-in and just invite you to connect with, if you have a menstrual cycle, just where you are in that cycle, how that feels for you in your body today. And if you don't have a menstrual cycle, just if there is a cycle or a rhythm, whether in your body or outwards in nature, that you do connect with, and how that feels for you today.
Well, this seems like such a straightforward question, but for any human that is listening to this right now and undergoing the rite of passage of perimenopause, then you will know that it is quite nuanced and, in fact, not that easy to answer. And so I am still cycling with my bleed, but in a very non-cyclical way, so to speak. And so I'm on day 4 of my cycle at the moment, but but that I could bleed in 48 hours. I could not bleed for 6 weeks from here. And so whether day 4 stretches into day 40, stretches into day 60, I'm not really certain. And so, Charlotte, I feel like I've somewhat not counting cyclical days anymore because there's nothing cyclical at the moment. It's all very non-linear and a little bit messy and wild, and that's okay. But yeah, so it's there, but it's not. That's just the complex answer to that question. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's funny because I relate. So I'm not in perimenopause, but I am breastfeeding, and my bleed has been so irregular for what feels like years between children, but it's still not found its regular rhythm. And sometimes I sort of have, like a 28 to 30-day cycle, and then sometimes it's 40, 45, and I can't always tell if I'm ovulating or not. I don't get that sort of archetypal ovulation experience, so I have to really finally watch for all of the things that sort of indicate that I might be ovulating. And it's been a real lesson in just being very present with it and letting go of the expectation of having like a textbook archetypal cycle. So I really hear you that you are day 4, but it could be a regular cycle, and it could be, who knows?
Exactly. Yeah. Who knows right now? There's an enormous amount of surrender that I'm needing to undertake at this stage of my life, which feels fitting because I think surrendering to certain aspects of our being in life is not always something that's easy when we're much younger. We want to be more active and in control and sure around what's happening. But the older I get, hopefully the little bit wiser I get, and the more I realize that letting go, surrendering, giving up a desire for control in lots of different circumstances has a very unique form of power in and of itself.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that. And I'm curious. So you, Julie, you've been my life coach trainer in the past. You are an incredible role model to me in business, in coaching, in leadership. You're somebody you've had your own business for a really long time, haven't you? Like couple of decades.
Yeah.
And your career spans beyond that. And so I just, first of all, feel to ask you, in your businesses, you have a couple of businesses, don't you? You have the Beautiful You Coaching Academy. You run the Priestess Temple School with Sora Schilling. You have your own coaching practice as well, which you are just starting up, which is so exciting. So across that, I'm just wondering whether and how, you're talking into that surrender. Do you, I guess, not being able to predict your cycle and working with other women and people who have cycles in your work, do you have a sense of trying to lean into that cyclical approach, or is it something that you're surrendering into, just being flexible and being very present in the moment and looking at how you're feeling and what you need?
I do believe that it's more of the second now, because the regularity and somewhat surety of my cycle is not with me anymore. And I'm going to call myself #blessed, because I know that this is not the case for all menstruators, that I was someone, when I was menstruating regularly, really did so regularly. Like, it didn't land on the exact same day, every 28 to 30 days or so, but it was almost like clockwork for many, many years, for decades, really. And so I was able to lean significantly in my life, particularly when I came to understand my cycle when I was older, in my 30s. I didn't really have that awareness in my teens or my 20s of when I more needed rest, and when I could be more active, and when I could expect more of myself, and be more nurturing and gentle in the different phases of our cycle. I don't have that as much anymore. And I have, as I mentioned before, Charlotte, surrendered to that. I can't get upset or frustrated about it, that it's not there for me to lean on anymore, as powerful as it was, because that's only going to make it worse. It's like things right now in my cycle, in the perimenopausal phase, which I think is also most definitely a reflection of the autumnal stage of my life, the Marga stage. I turned 50 this year, where things are a little bit wild. They're a little bit unpredictable. It's like not everything is very linear or straightforward in many different ways. I have a lot more choices that are available to me now as an older midlife woman who is very much recognizing that life is way, way from over, and there's a lot more ahead of me, but there's also a lot more behind me too, and a lot of lessons that come with that. So I can't lean into that cyclical regularity anymore. And it is much more of that second aspect of just being in the present moment, listening to what it is that I need at any given time. And also, I am finding myself within the last couple of years in particular, and my sense is, my intuitive knowing is that this is not going to change anytime soon, is that I am beginning to more heavily lean into the seasons of the Great Mother around those times and what they mean for me in my life. And it's not a coincidence, I don't believe, that now coming out of summer, I felt like I've been on a really high vibe, incredible. Things are opening up a little bit more, a lot more actually. After COVID, we're still in it, of course, but it's been a lot more connection and shining and being out in the world. But that now I'm kind of feeling done with that now. It's autumn now, I'm descending, and winter is coming, and I'm needing to be careful right now that I don't plug myself in too much now, because winter is coming and it's time for more rest. So what I do for that now, the seeds I plant around that now, and the harvesting I do around that now, is very, very important for the restful winter that I hope to come.
Beautiful. That's really powerful. And I absolutely have that approach with the way I run my business as well, is to really lean into those seasons and let myself be more productive at certain times, and more interested in growth and creativity and holding space for others, and then taking a bit more of a time to come backwards. Like, say, the descent, I'm feeling that now, like the leaves are really dropping, and I feel like my energy's like, we've got school holidays starting, and I'm so glad for that pause. I used to resent school holidays. It seems really contentious to say that in a way. It's like, oh no, I'm going to have the kids all the time and I can't do anything. And oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to schedule this? And I've got to say no to people. I'm not available. And now I'm like, no, calendar's all blocked out. Just, really looking forward to being present, really being present and using it. Although I'll be busy and I'll be running around like a mad woman with the kids, I'll still be refueling my tank. And so, hearing you at that stage of your life where, it's a stage of life for you, but it's also seasonal, and you're letting that carry you into where you need to go for what comes next, sowing those seeds.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because these sorts of things where we do experience rest and rejuvenation and more time to be able to connect with our intuitive self does not always come spontaneously. And this is where, as some people describe it, the more masculine elements that are available to all of us of things such as planning and structure and systems and looking ahead have a very powerful role to play in our more feminine aspects being able to come forth and flourish and thrive. It's a nice concept, I think, to think that, we can all be just free and flowing and spontaneous, whenever we want. But it's not the way that the modern world works. And it's just not the way that folks who have businesses and careers and children and commitments and clients and things like that. There has to be a container. There has to be some planning, there has to be some calendars. There has to be some holding that is available to us to lean into those times of rest, because sometimes if we don't plan for them, we don't allow them to really come forth, they don't happen.
I really hear you on that. And I've been guilty of that in the past. It's been a real learning to me to put that structure in place instead of just playing in the kind of yin, I guess, feminine, for want of a better word, and that kind of intuitive, creative, let's say playful and spontaneous energy, which I'm really happy there. But doing the planning, having the structure, it's like, this isn't fun, but I really need to do it, to hold, like you say, to hold and allow that balance and that potential for both.
Absolutely. I have come to recognize and understand that I've learned to love that side of things a lot more than I used to, because I now recognize what it gives me. And it gives me room to play, room to rest, room to breathe, because I consciously create it that way. And so there's enormous power in there.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things I really wanted to ask you about today is you are, you're such a leader, and you are somebody who really, has grown an organization from the ground up. You are the leader of this community. You've really built something that's so powerful in the Beautiful You Coaching Academy. You're not just very present in the actual teaching space. You've really created this beautiful culture around it as well, of the trainees that you're bringing in, the trainers that you have. The whole thing is just really taught me so much about creating beautiful community, but really leading as well as a thought leader, but somebody who really seeks to raise others with you. That's how it feels to me. And one of the phrases I've heard you use is, I believe, sacred leadership. I really wanted to ask you to explain what that is to you, how you found your way there, and kind of what your values are, what values really come with that. Just to hear you speak on that, please.
Well, thank you for asking me this, because right now this is one of my most beloved topics to talk about. And I think I've come to being passionate about sacred leadership through a number of portals, some of them that have felt very lush and lovely, and others that have felt very dark and fiery, a little bit of both. And I think it's also come about from both an internal perspective and also an external one. If I can speak to the external one, I think my passion and exploration for sacred leadership has come about in that realm because I think that we are lacking sacred leadership and examples of that in prominent places throughout the globe so deeply. There is a terrible deficit of leadership that is sacred, that honors all life, that assists people to transform and grow and lean into their own purpose and self-belief and wholeness. You know, we've been sold and told such a hierarchical, patriarchal, capitalist, white supremacy laden version of leadership for so long, where it's all about who's out the front, who's got the most, how much you can get people to do what you ask them to do, how much money you're earning, etc., etc. I could go on and on about that. It's a whole topic in and of itself. And it is not a coincidence at all that the people that have the most power in the world are white, heterosexual, cis-gendered men. And I'm not saying that all of those men do not have aspects of the sacred or sacred leadership within them. Of course, we are not all the same. But we are not seeing the type of leadership that we could be seeing that uplifts humanity, that honors all life and all the things I was talking about before. And this is why, Charlotte, I think the archetype and the embodiment of the priestess is really, really flourishing at this point in time, because at the heart of all priestesses is a sacred leader. Is how can I honor myself and my own needs and my own work, my own healing, my own wholeness, so that I can become a better leader and space holder for others and allow their uniqueness, their gifts, their joy, their passions come forth, and for them to connect with their soul, their divinity in such a way that they then go out and touch the lives of other people as well. And so I don't think that's a coincidence that as we're seeing this type of leadership that is no longer resonating, if it ever really, really did, with so many of us, not just women, but non-binary folk and other men as well, recognizing that there are serious deficits here. We're facing a climate crisis and have been, not recently, but for such a long time. Rising instances of mental health, intergenerational incarceration. Oh, you could just go on and on. And what is it that we're doing about these things? And recognizing as a sacred leader that it begins with our own work, our own healing. We can't just be constantly turning out and go, well, I'll volunteer here and I'll donate here and I'll do this. Those things matter and they can have great importance. But what is of deeper matter to a sacred leader is the work that we need to do on ourselves. And I think that that's the primary thing that I love most about the path of sacred leadership, is that its primary purpose is to really encourage people who want to ignite this path for themselves to look at all the aspects of self that require healing, where we might be holding ourselves back, keeping ourselves small, shutting our voice off, comparing ourselves to others, thinking that we're not as good as someone else, dulling our light, our bitterness, our jealousies, our fears, and understanding that to be a magnificent sacred leader requires love, compassion, and work on those aspects of oneself first. And from there, then we can continue to step out into the world as more of a whole, healing, magnificent person that allows room for others to step into that space as well.
Incredible. Wow, thank you for sharing that and explaining the difference, but also the absolute importance of doing that inner work, and it's starting from within so that we're healed. Well, it's never healed, are we? But we're healing and acknowledging the wounding or the shadows, whatever you might call it, that's there. So we're not projecting that onto other people. We are able to invite others into their um, into their greatness, into their leadership. And we can only do that if we're able to hold space for them to do that. That's what I'm really
Exactly.
feeling. Mm.
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. You know, my exploration and study and work with divine Indigenous leaders and other healers around this, it constantly keeps coming back to the same thing. And that is that sacred leaders really are there on a path and a mission in life to assist in the transformation and uplifting of others. And that doesn't come about from telling people what to do. It doesn't come about from a model. It doesn't come about from a system or a theory. It doesn't come from any of those things. It comes from creating the conditions between ourselves as human beings where we honor ourselves and all aspects of our light and darkness and everything in between so deeply and so beautifully that we can be in space with others, whether that be as a mother, a teacher, a coach, a healer, a guide, a boss, a mentor, whatever it might be, where we are so clean and clear that anything can come forth from our child, our sister, our client, our employee, our team member, whatever it may be, and that the conditions that we've created for ourselves, because we've got ourselves, because we know ourselves, because we are our own greatest space holder first, that anything can come forth there and we will not crumble. We will not lose ourselves. We will not take on board anybody else's stuff. We will not allow ourselves to fall into a pit of pity with that person or anger or frustration. And that if we do, because that just makes us human and it happens from time to time, we recognize it and we meet it with compassion and love and we deal with it straight away. We take radical self-responsibility for what's transpiring in us and we clean ourselves out again and we go again.
Oh, I'm feeling all inspired, and I can feel some fire in my heart and my belly. And when you were describing that, I really had this, it's like, well, that's the quality of a great coach. That's exactly what you instill in everybody who goes through the school. And that's exactly what I work on in order to hold space for others. But I would love to ask you, you were just saying at the end about we take radical self-responsibility, we have love and compassion for ourselves, we do that inner work. You're a devoted priestess in yourself, practicing priestess, and you co-lead the Priestess Temple School. And I just would love to hear, if you're happy to share, about your spiritual practice, how this supports you in that sacred leadership, what kind of practice you have that really holds you into your integrity and your power, and keeping grounded. Especially, I feel, as a multi-passionate person in your work, there's a lot of different things perhaps going on. What is it that really helps you to do that and anchor back into yourself?
Well, thank you for asking me this question. And I always feel like I somehow or another need to qualify it to begin with, because I am not one of those people that has a richly beautiful Instagrammable morning routine.
Me neither.
I know. Right. Okay. So I know that some people have one of those, and I'm fascinated by them. And I'm like, wow, you go, because that is fine and beautiful. And, I have tried to have one of those for
Same.
myself.
I can't do morning routines, for one thing.
Yeah, well, I am a morning person. I definitely recognize that my brain, my intuition, my fire center, everything is lit up in the morning, much more so. I've not had a one-on-one client session or done an interview after about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Charlotte, probably for about 10 years. I've recognized that's not my time of day. But if you want to catch me at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll probably say yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'm 10 after the kids are dropped off. And then 2 o'clock, I've really got to start thinking about going to do pickup, and my energy's starting to dip. So I feel like I have a very narrow window, but then come 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I'm up again. I'm good.
Wow. See, I'm a little bit jealous of that. But I'm also a little bit older than you, and so I'll give myself a break.
Yeah, totally.
7 or 8 o'clock, I'm sitting. Yeah, I'm sitting with a cat in my lap on the couch with either a book or a cup of tea or both or some such thing. And so the first thing that I want to say here is that I'm not so sure that I have an actual practice. In fact, I don't. What I have are practices. And I dip in and out of those a little bit like what we were talking about at the start of the interview, when I need them. But if it's one thing, if and when I need them, or they most call me. But if it's one thing that I know as part of my deep spiritual practice that is a non-negotiable with me, it is alone, quiet, uninterrupted, I should say, time every single day. And I feel very blessed that I have a lovely office space, which also doubles really as a spiritual room for me. And so within this space that I'm talking to you now, I have my altar, a beautiful cushion to sit on and contemplate. And so I am on that cushion every single day. And sometimes it may be 5 to 10 minutes of simple journaling because I feel called to write and release something. I'm also an enormous fan of breath work and have become very devoted to that in the last few years in particular in my life. I have found that it has helped me deal sometimes with some little bit of overwhelm and anxiety. I'm not someone that experiences anxiety in a clinical way, but I recognize sometimes when I push myself, as we all do sometimes, that's what comes up for me, and returning to my breath helps with that enormously, as well as just slowing down. I also am very devoted to oracle insight. I don't consider myself very versed in tarot, but I do love oracle cards for their inspiration and guidance. One of my deep core values in life is beauty. And I find a lot of inspiration in beautiful art and writing, music, words, things like that. Music is also something I bring into my practices as well. Sometimes I'll have a dance in my room and space here, probably, a few times a month. I would do that, as sometimes slow and gentle, sometimes faster, to move energy. And the last thing that really comes to me as well, and I take this in every way that I can possibly get it, is time, expressing my nature in the elements of nature and the Great Mother. I have learned through one of our great co-teachers, Charlotte, in Jane Hardwick Collins, to never say, "Oh, I'm going out to spend time in nature." She's schooled me in that more than once, to say, "Julie, you are nature. You don't go to nature. You are nature. She is you. You are her." And so developing my relationship with the Great Mother is an enormous part of my spiritual practice as well. Sometimes that can be as simple as sitting on my lawn and or running around the lawn playing with our beautiful dog. And then other times it's much more immersive than that. I don't live very far from the beach, which is beautiful. And any time that I can get in that with my feet in the sand, my hands in the leaves, my arms around a tree, lying on the ground, listening to the birds, and just tapping into that deep sense of belonging, of knowing that she is there to guide me and support me every single day. And when I swing my feet out of bed in the morning and put them on the ground, that she's always there. And sometimes I forget to say hello and thank you. And I need to remind myself continually through my practice to do that more.
That's really gorgeous. The thing that really strikes me is the way you said that you have practices. And I think that's something that people can get very tripped up on. It's the idea that it's you do a practice and then you're done and you're kind of better. Or you do the same thing every day as a routine that doesn't change. And that's going to be what works for you. That is like an anchor. And for some people that does, but I'm really on the same page as you. For me, it's in the moment, like, how am I feeling and what do I need? And, I have developed an awareness of what I need depending on where in my cycle I am, or, the time of the year as well. That really seems to influence, especially the music that I put on. So I really enjoy like an embodied movement practice. And the music is completely different. And I can tell because I've curated these playlists. And if I listen to a playlist when I'm not experiencing that seasonal energy, I hate it. I can't go near it. It makes me angry.
Yep.
So I know that I'm like, but when I pick the right one, it's like, oh yes, it just really invites me into whatever's there. And feeling at the minute, as I was explaining, my cycle is very irregular. I didn't do my cycle check-in. I'm day 27. So potentially might bleed in the next week or so. And it depends whether I did definitely ovulate or not, because I wear this wearable thermometer that tells you, if you track the temperatures, it can tell you if you're ovulated, but my child hid it for a good 10 days from me. So I missed it. So I don't have the record, but so I will bleed one way or another. But regardless, without trying to sort of say, well, I am if I did ovulate and I'm not if I didn't, it's just how I feel. And I feel in that inner autumn premenstrual phase. So I'm going with that. And so I put that playlist on yesterday and just let my body move. I was like, oh God, it felt good. I'd really found the right music to match that energy. So yeah, I really think that, having like a toolkit, like a medicine bag, whatever you want to call it, and go to and pick out the practice that just speaks to you.
Very, very, very powerful. And the one constant, as I said, for me, as far as a spiritual practice, if it could even be called that, because it's pretty loose in relation to some people's practices, it's just non-negotiable time alone every day. And that's not for hours and hours, monk-like.
Yeah.
It could just be 5 to 10 minutes, but just checking in. What does my inner guidance want me to know? How am I meant to be of service today? What do I need? What's calling me right now? Just to check in with that. That is a spiritual practice in and of itself. That is my one go-to every day. And what comes forth in some days can be very telling and pointed and this. And then other days it might be very soft and see how you feel. And then other days, and these are probably the most magnificent days of all, there's nothing.
That's really lovely. I think that's a really powerful, super simple, effective thing we can all just do. And I was thinking originally when you said having time every day, I thought, oh, I would love that. I don't get that very easily. but remembering, just minutes, simple minutes. It's accessible. It's accessible.
Absolutely.
And what you do with that minute,
Yep.
is your mind spinning, or are you in, how am I feeling and what do I need today?
Yeah, we overthink as human beings significantly, Charlotte, sometimes, and think that things need to be big or grand or long to really be deeply impactful. And that just simply isn't true. For example, it is now late morning when you and I are talking with each other. And my check-in with myself today, or that time, that practice with myself today, I have completed. I did it at about 7:30 this morning, I have no time or rhyme around when these things occur. And it was 5 minutes of simple circular breathing. That was all I did, with a drop-in question at the end, asking myself, what does my inner guidance want me to know today? And what came forth was just a really simple knowing of what was going to be unfolding for me over the days ahead, which actually involves tomorrow getting on a plane for the first time in years to travel, sort of semi-post pandemic. And the message was simply, relax. It's okay. Relax. And it was medicine for me in that moment, because I've been a bit worried about it. It's like, oh gosh, all the things are coming in. It feels like packing a bag 10 days in advance, silly stuff. And it just relax. And instantly I felt calmer and better, and I've moved on with my day. And that's my practice for today. That's what I needed.
Incredible. Thank you. I love that so much. I'm going to remember that and do that after our conversation. My very last question to you, I really wanted to touch on this. So very, very recently, I've discovered that you are co-curating a TEDx at Cecil Street in Melbourne with Joe Parker, and this is opening in September. Now, I see you in this divine sacred leadership role with this. I just want to hear so much about this. What's your intention for this space? What conversations are you looking to spotlight on this platform?
Well, our theme for the inaugural TEDx Cecil Street is Beyond the Binary. And this was a theme that Joe and I came up with together in our deep desire to bring forth conversations that challenge us to think outside the box and challenge us to hear voices that are living beyond the realms of what we have in society come to see as the norm, as usual. And this circles back to what I was talking about with sacred leadership before, around thinking differently, because boy, do we need to. There are so many things in the world right now, Charlotte, that are sensational and magnificent and beautiful and so inspiring. And there are also so many things in the world that are deeply harmful and stuck and stagnant and constantly trying to send us messages to keep us in our place, to keep us small, to keep us quiet. And so we're championing voices and ideas and topics on the day that might be a bit uncomfortable for folks. And I think we're ready for it. I think it's time. We're curating this magnificent field of people to start talking about things that are often swept under the carpet or challenging or difficult. Just yesterday, we confirmed a speaker who is an incredible nurse practitioner and is passionate about the pathway being one that's very dignified into aged care. And this is something that so often nobody wants to talk about. It's like, we are shunning our elderly away. We are not listening to them. The life stage of the crone is so problematic for so many people. It's like, I think the talk is probably going to be entitled Over My Dead Body. Right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. That expression that we have is like, I'm not going in, or no, we're not putting them in, or anything like that. But sometimes the reality of life is that this is something that has to happen. And it is going to be something that people who are younger and younger have to deal with all the time, because folks are now having children when they're older. Mm-hmm. And so that means that people in their 30s and 40s are going to have to be facing this reality for their parents, let alone maybe being involved with their grandparents. And so it's one of those topics that nobody wants to talk about until it's actually happening. But let's talk about it now. Let's create better pathways. That's just one example of, let's bring to light these conversations and think outside the box of what is possible for us as human beings. And some other amazing talks as well. We have an incredible researcher that's coming to speak about the fact that she believes we can find a cure for dementia.
Oh, wow.
Which is incredible. Somebody coming to speak about being autistic and creative, and the marriage between those two, and so many more things. And so it's going to be such an incredible day. We are also not just approaching speakers, we're going to be searching for them. And so we're looking for people to be really bold and brave and step forward with big topics.
Amazing. Fantastic. And where can people find out more about this? So I've got your Instagram for the TEDx's. It's TEDx Cecil Street, and I'll put all your links in the show notes. But is that where you'd like people to go and find out about this?
Yeah, for the moment, Charlotte, that's where we live. The website is on its way, but for now, we're sort of leaning into the social space, but it's coming soon. We're so excited about it.
Fantastic. Well, everybody listening, there's your call to action. If you've got something potent to share, then go and check it out. I'm really hoping to get on my first plane post COVID and hop down to Melbourne. I'd love to come along. So,
well, that would be amazing. We would welcome you.
Thank you. Well, Julie, thank you so much for a really inspiring and affirming and just heart-opening conversation as well for me. I've loved speaking with you, but really hearing what drives you and how you operate in this world, in business, in your own practice as well, while staying really true to yourself and connected and grounded to your own journey, your own integrity, and how you then use that to do the incredible work that you are doing and across multiple realms. So thank you for being such a powerful leader and inspiration to me and to so many others.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlotte. It's been a joy to have this conversation with you, and thank you for all of your medicine and magic in the world in bringing forth everything that you do and your work in menstrual education. It's deeply inspiring. Sometimes when I'm in the world of incredible humans such as yourself doing work in this area, I feel somewhat poignantly nostalgic for my childhood and the fact that these things just were not around in that time. But I'm so glad they are now. And I'm so glad that while I was still cycling, I got to be a part of it. So thank you for all you do too.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, well, I will pop all the links to where people can connect with you. So in the show notes, we've got your personal Instagram at Julesy Parker, and there's the Beautiful You Coaching Academy. Your Priestess podcast as well, which is just absolutely fabulous. And I am a devoted listener. Julie just shares the most incredible conversations on incredible topics across spirituality and leadership with some of the world's greatest leaders. So go check that out if you somehow haven't yet come across that. I'll put everything into the show notes. But thank you, Julie, and have a beautiful day.
And you too. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.